On Tuesday the 5th of May 1992, nature granted the Museum of Victoria a special bonus. At Cathedral Rock, 4 kilometres northeast of Lorne, on Victoria's spectacular southern coast, the body of an 18.7 metre whale washed ashore. As the huge glistening tail tossed backwards and forwards in the surf, it created the impression that the whale might still be alive. But sadly, that was not the case. This poignant event offered the Museum of Victoria a rare chance to acquire a specimen of the largest species that has ever lived on Earth, for this was a blue whale. In the single whaling season of 1930-31, a total of 30,000 blue whales was killed worldwide, and the population has simply never recovered from that onslaught. Today, the Antarctic population probably numbers fewer than 8,000, and although they're on the increase, their reproductive rate is so slow that many decades may have to elapse before they can be removed from the endangered list. Sexually mature female blue whales produce a single 6-metre-long calf just once every 2 or 3 years. It may be their sheer size, it may be their gentleness or their supposed intelligence. Whatever it is, whales and dolphins have attracted a great deal of attention in recent years and have become a universally recognised symbol of the conservation movement. For museum director Graham Morris, this was a chance too good to miss.
A lot of people will be interested to know why it died, so we'll do a normal autopsy and find out. Next thing, a lot of zoologists will be very interested to study it because you don't keep these in fish tanks at home to study, and this is a pretty rare event. And then we'll take over in a slightly more ghoulish way, I guess. We'll strip it back to its skeleton, and that'll become a prize exhibit at our new museum.
For the interested onlookers, it was an educational experience they'll never forget. The whale was bloated with gases that normally build up during tissue breakdown, and many of the workers expressed concern that the grotesquely distended body might actually burst. Fortunately, it didn't. For the museum's operations manager, Kevin Kelly, and the preparators, the task of retrieving the huge mammal was challenging in the extreme. Such events occur so rarely that there are no handbooks, no manuals of procedure, so it's a task that requires ingenuity and efficient organisation. The process of retrieval required bulldozers to move the 40-tonne body up the beach, cranes to raise it to the Great Ocean Road, and a very large low loader to transport it to a suitable site at which a post-mortem could be carried out and the skeleton prepared for display. The operation required the most delicate touch on the part of the bulldozer and crane drivers, and with consummate skill they successfully loaded what would have to be their most unusual cargo ever onto the truck, much to the fascination of the crowd. The body of the whale was laid out on the grass at Melbourne Water's sewage treatment plant at Werribee, a location chosen partly because it was felt the whale's own peculiar aroma might be less obvious there. This was a post-mortem with a difference. No stainless steel bench, no green-suited pathologist. But the aim was just the same, to establish the cause of death. For these vets, up to their waists in decaying whale, the experience was obviously unpleasant, but it was also worthwhile. They were unable to find an exact cause of death. The whale's various organs and tissues seemed free of obvious disease and parasites. They did notice, however, that the layer of blubber was rather thinner than it should have been, suggesting that the animal was malnourished. Over the following weeks and months, museum preparators Peter Swinkle, Jim Cousins, Dean Smith and Ewan Wood set about the task of stripping away the flesh from the bones. The curator of mammals, Joan Dixon, and her staff also took the opportunity to observe, photograph and measure the carcass, baleen and skeleton. This information will be a significant addition to our present scant database on blue whales in southern waters. Blue whales can grow to 33 metres in length. The size of this specimen, at 18.7 metres, together with the presence of relatively large amounts of cartilage in its skull, which in an older animal would have turned to bone, confirms that this was a young male. An unequivocal vote of interest in the blue whale was passed on Sunday the 17th of May 1992 when Melbourne Water opened the Werribee Treatment Complex to the public. An estimated 6,000 people braved a chilly afternoon to come and get close to the only blue whale most of them will ever see. Surprisingly, many visitors were unaware that this type of whale has no teeth. Instead, its upper jaws are lined with rows of what look like bristly old brooms.
This here is the baleen, which is what the animal uses to catch its food. The animal lives on krill, which are small crustaceans, about 2.5 centimetres long. They're like little prawns.
Right.
And as it takes in water rich in krill, it then pushes the water back out through its mouth, and the krill get caught on the fringed hairs on the inside of the baleen. It's like a big sieve or a net which catches all the krill.
Despite the weather and the smell, people's reactions were unanimously enthusiastic.
How often do you walk up to a whale and see it? You don't, do you? I mean, you see them out in the ocean, you don't know what makes them tick, you see them moving, but with another animal, you see them around you, but this you'd never ever get close to, would you?
I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as has been said on the news. This thing only happens once every so many years, and for something like this to be on exhibition for people to see is marvellous.
Some did have their reservations.
I think it sticks.
For Jim Cousins' son, the legacy of his father's weeks of patient work, waist deep in dead whale, was all too obvious.
How long is my dad going to stink for?
In order to help remove flesh from the bones, preparators decided to enlist nature's help. What better than the bacteria in a sewage treatment pond to speed the process along? Nature also lent a helping hand when the skull was left out to weather in the sun. It may seem grisly to us, but for this baby rat, the inner sanctum of the whale's brain case was the perfect housing estate, with food laid on. Piece by piece, the remains were transported to Melbourne for further cleaning and degreasing. The skull was buried in sand to allow bacteria to digest the remaining flesh, but the vertebrae and other large bones were scoured by hand after warm bacterial digestion in a maceration tank. For preparators accustomed to dealing with everything from pied geese to platypus, the major problem posed by the whale was understandably its sheer size. At every stage of the process, the key issue was one of scale. Everything from the cooking pot to the assembly area had to be large enough to accommodate these massive bones. The first real reward came when the vertebrae and ribs were laid out in order. Even without the skull, the symmetry of the skeleton acquired a poignant majesty reminiscent of that possessed by the blue whale in life. When completed, the skeleton of the blue whale from Lorne is destined to take pride of place in the main gallery of the museum, where it will be on display for all Victorians and visitors to Australia to enjoy.